Well, hello, everybody. Thanks again for taking the time to be with me. I really appreciate it and appreciate the fact that we're definitely growing this channel. And I have a very interesting and different presentation for you today. This is going to be one of those longer videos, and I've titled this lecture Memory Lane, a trip down ufology's memory lane. And this is a collection of photographs, and credit goes to Antonio Huneas, who's a friend of mine, co-worker. He had a large collection of photographs that were taken probably between 82 and 93, and then some of these date back a lot earlier than that. So that's going to be kind of the game plan here for today. It's just going to be a collection of photographs, and these are all kind of the highlights of ufology, some of the more prominent researchers, and we'll go ahead and get started right now with our first slide. And this is Memory Lane, a trip down ufology's memory lane. And we'll start right here. And what you have here is Operation Right to Know and the UFO cover-up. So this was a demonstration on Washington, D.C., July 5th, 1993. And there was a relatively good group that showed up here. They walked down, they had picket signs, and we'll move forward with some of these slides here and just read this as we go along here. End UFO secrecy now. UFO, the people have a right to know. UFOs, are real and the government knows it. Stop the cover-up Watergate. So interesting here. And here you see them walking right by the White House, Washington, D.C. Relatively large group, and it was covered by the media. And just to record for history here, and you can see them walking down right by the White House. And here we are all these years later, and we're still kind of at this stagnant rate. Now, we've made some progress, but we really need to move this field forward. And I'm going to give a couple of suggestions of how we can do this as we move through here. And we'll continue on with our slides here. End UFO secrecy now. UFO, the people have a right to know. Yeah, we have a right to know. Let's get it. Let's do it. We're going to keep on moving here. FBI UFO crash documents. Bill afraid to tell public. I love it. I love it. So you can tell what vintage this was. So we're going back a couple of years. So we really need to take a proactive approach. If we don't, this time will pass us by and we won't get disclosure. So again, we have to come together as a united coalition, and we'll talk about a few ways that we can do that here. So here's Antonio on their kind of a platform speaking about it. Relatively small group, but they did make an impact. It did happen, and just recording this for history now as we move along. And these were kind of scanned in at about 600 DPI. We have the right to know. End UFO secrecy now. So the call went out. Not everyone got to go to this, but it was the hardcore researchers and enthusiasts that showed up to this particular event. End UFO secrecy night, Timothy Green Beckley. Now we've got a couple of photos of Timothy that I've grouped together here just to highlight some of our UFO researchers. Gentleman was a very good researcher, multiple books, multiple interviews, well done for Timothy Beckley. Now here we've got Jalen Hynek and Antonio. This is kind of a rare shot. I don't think it's been seen before. In fact, I don't think you'll see any of these photos before. This will sort of be a world exclusive, and we'll continue on with our presentation here. Now, this is at the United Nations, and from one over to the right, we've got Jalen Hynek, we've got Jacques Vallee, and then we've got Major Larry Coyne, and this is part of the Mansfield, Ohio UFO encounter that even the debunkers could not hit, because this is an ironclad case. This has to do with the helicopter that got hit by the green ray. It lifted it up, and then there was a thump, and the craft was gone. And so Larry Coyne went to the United Nations and really impressed upon the people there that this phenomenon is real. It did take place, and the caliber of the witness is what really drives this case particular home to the United Nations. Now, we've also talked about Gordon Cooper. He gave lectures multiple times. And as we've mentioned, he had two significant UFO encounters, one in 1951 at an East German air base, and also in 1957 at Edwards Air Force Base as well. So astronaut Gordon Cooper, one of our original Mercury 7 astronauts, wrote a book called Leap of Faith. He was a big believer. He went to the United Nations, wrote a letter there describing his personal thoughts on the whole phenomenon. So credit has to go to astronaut Gordon Cooper for being a pioneer and a trailblazer in this field. And we'll continue on here. So here we have an entire group of researchers. And again, Gordon Cooper is in the center here, John Carpenter to the left, and then Chris Stiles to the right. Over here, we've got Antonio and Eric von Daniken. So these are some early shots. Don't think they've been seen before. And I've kind of grouped some of these other shots of Mr. von Daniken. Giorgio and Antonio over to the right. So early photographs and just maintaining an important part of our national history as we continue down our memory lane road trip within ufology. Here we've got Timothy and Mr. von Daniken together, rare shot. And it's good to see these gentlemen. Now, also have Frank Drake, who worked on the Drake equation. He was a part of this collection as well. So I wanted to make sure that I covered him. And then we have Monsignor Balducci, and we've got a couple of interesting photographs of him. He was very outspoken and actually broke some ground within this field. And here's Antonio and Monsignor Balducci together. This is a rare one, John Mack, and we also have Monsignor Balducci in here. So this I don't think you're going to see very often. And you know that it was John Mack who really broke a lot of new ground, pioneering ground within the field of abductions. And it was challenged by the institutions, the educational institutions challenged him, but the credibility of this particular man is what actually won the day for this particular research effort. So we've got Antonio, John Mack, and Monsignor Balducci, and also we have Michael Hesseman in this particular photo. Jacques Vallee, author researcher Jacques Vallee, outspoken. He's still doing his thing now. Multiple books, good presentation, always a good lecturer, and he's very well respected in this field. Here's a rare photo of Jacques Vallee and Antonio. Again, these are 600 DPI, and I just don't think these photos have really ever seen the light of day. Credit goes to Antonio for allowing me to bring this to all of you today. Timothy Good, above top secret author, researcher. This particular researcher broke a tremendous amount of ground. He opened this field to a lot of people, both here and in England, and the credibility of witnesses within the book are very good. Neil Armstrong is mentioned as well, and so credit goes to Timothy Good for his groundbreaking research. Our good friend Bob Dean lived in Phoenix, Arizona area, multiple lecturer. He always had a great PowerPoint presentation, great slides, just a heartfelt, gentle, kind human being. And it's sad that he's no longer with us. And that's the case with a lot of these people. They're just no longer with us. So it's even more important, and the responsibility falls upon us to even push forward to honor their legacy as well. And that's one reason why we're doing this again. Here we have Charles Berlitz, author, researcher, did a lot of groundbreaking research on multiple different subjects. So it's important that we highlight him as a researcher as well. George Knapp and Antonio, this is back in '93. I think we all know the story of George Knapp, investigative journalist over in Las Vegas area, and he's continuing his research, and it's always good to have a nice photo of George Knapp. I grouped him here as well, a couple of early photographs, and it's good to see George Knapp within this group. Darryl Sims, the UFO hunter. I thought it was interesting that we include him as well. He's done some groundbreaking research, and a lot of these people have done lectures pretty much across the country on different MUFON symposiums, also the local Phoenix area, given lectures there as well. John Anthony West. Wow, what can we say about John Anthony West? A tremendous researcher, pioneered the field of Egyptology, specifically pertaining to the Sphinx enclosure, and how he really noticed this vertical fissure erosion that is due to high amounts of rainfall, not wind erosion, because wind erosion back cuts the under layers. But when you have rain erosion and water erosion, you see these dripping fissures that come down vertically from top to bottom. It's a completely different way of erosion. And that amount of rainfall has literally not been in Egypt for over 11,000 years. So you can really throw out the, you could call it party line statements regarding Egypt and what took place there. This particular subject matter even went all the way to Jeopardy. So now you know you made it big time, right? The question was, what ancient artifact has now been dated twice its previous age? The answer is the Sphinx. So John Anthony West gets credit for really bringing this to the world. And this is a photograph of John Anthony West and Antonio. Nice photograph of journalist and ufologist John Keel, a well-known author within this field. Credit goes to him for groundbreaking research and really opening up the eyes to a lot of people within this field. Now, I included this one as kind of a panel discussion. Over here on the left, you've got Jim Mars, Linda's in there, Antonio's in there, and it's always good to see Jim Mars, groundbreaking researcher within this field, and we certainly miss him very much. Now, I thought it would be interesting to include this one. This is Hermann Oberth, thought of as one of the original founders of rocketry. Antonio got to meet him as well. He made some interesting statements along the way. And this is another photograph of Hermann Oberth. So credit goes to Antonio for actually doing some boots on the ground legwork and meeting with him. Now, these are some rare shots here. Colman von Keviczky, Hermann Oberth, and Antonio. Mr. Keviczky really had some interesting, you could call them briefing documents. He also had some booklets, and these were kind of on a monthly basis, and he would hand these out. I've got a couple of them from Antonio's collection. Extremely rare information, extremely rare. So it's good to finally allow some of these researchers and historians to kind of get the credit they deserve here. Robert Friend was intimately involved in Project Blue Book. He's made some interesting statements that I've heard from other people that confirm practically everything we've known. There is a cover-up. They know more than they're saying. So credit goes to Robert Friend for being a part of Project Blue Book. Al Bielek, somewhat controversial. He was involved allegedly in the Philadelphia experiment, but some early vintage photographs of Al Bielek. Sort of credit goes to Al for opening up the field to the Philadelphia experiment and the things that he had mentioned about being a part of that particular experiment in time travel, what actually took place there. Frank Stranges had some interesting research that he had done as well. Credit goes to Frank Stranges for what he has done within ufology. Here we have Antonio and Frank Stranges. And then this is a blow up here. These two gentlemen researchers. Okay, so Antonio and author Bill Moore. Interesting researcher, done some very, you could call it somewhat controversial research, but this is early, I'm guessing vintage 83 timeframe. This is going back a ways. So credit goes to Antonio for pulling these together, and we're showing them here for the first time. Ingo Swan, remote viewer expert, and Antonio. So good to see Ingo Swan within this collection as well, maintaining an important part of our national history. Interesting group here. Antonio, Mike Luckman, and Timothy Good. This is one you won't see anywhere else, vintage time frame. And you can see holding the book Above Top Secret by Timothy Good. Antonio, Richard Haines, and Bruce Maccabee. So Richard Haines, as you know, had dealt with pilot UFO sightings, and specifically JAL Flight 1628 that encountered not one, not two, but three craft. Two of them were about 150 feet in diameter. They looked like half coffee cup cans sliced in half, about 150 feet in diameter. There was a black plastic, you could call it, layer that took place right within the middle part of the craft. And then it had these amber lights on either side. That did a complete 360 as the 747 was cleared by ATC to try to lose these craft. And then later on in the part B of this particular encounter, there was a craft, quote unquote, twice the size of an aircraft carrier that came up from the left behind the 747. And this was confirmed within the JAL Flight 1628 case that Richard Haines actually went to bat for the pilot who got fired for talking about this, and then later he was reinstated. The controversial Bill Cooper. Bill Cooper, what can we say? Behold a pale horse, groundbreaking researcher, a controversial researcher, but nonetheless, he did move this field forward. And this is kind of he was either all in or he wasn't in at all. He was never a lukewarm person. He was polarizing. People loved him or they hated him, but credit goes to Bill Cooper for bringing a lot of subjects up within this field. Bill Hamilton also did some very good research. He talked about triangles, boomerangs, very interesting UFO sightings, and many historical cases as well. So credit goes to Bill Hamilton for doing his research. Jamie Chandra, some interesting controversial research that he was involved in. This is 5/11/1991, so sort of a vintage photograph that we're bringing here for the very first time. Bob Exler had done some very good groundbreaking research. NASA consultant, NASA type engineer. His was a more technical approach. He did delve into Bob Lazar a bit, but credit goes to Bob Exler for doing his research and maintaining our history within ufology. Robert Wood, Ryan Wood together as a dynamic duo team doing research on crash retrievals, on document authentication. So credit goes to Robert Wood for his tremendous research within this field. Brian O'Leary, Stanton, Friedman, and Antonio. And unfortunately, Stanton's not with us anymore. Brian O'Leary, Antonio's here with us, but boy, do we miss these people. We're losing so many of our ufologists, and we're losing so much of this history. Now, fortunately, Stanton Friedman's collection has been maintained, so we have that, but I think we all just miss hearing Stanton Friedman and his kind of bulldogish way that he would approach this field. And so we sort of miss him. Thoughts go out to Stanton Friedman for sure. Can't believe it's been so long. Bruce Maccabee, physicist and basically a researcher, lecturer, and then photographic analysis expert. Credit goes to Bruce Maccabee. Here he is again in his office here. So good to see him within this collection as well. Here's a rare one, Bruce Maccabee, Bill Moore, Stanton Friedman. Vintage 83, 78, 83 timeframe, somewhere on there. We'll get into a couple of really old photographs that were the beginning process of the FOIA requests and getting those documents released. So all of these CIA documents were released under Peter Gersten, and we'll go ahead and continue moving forward. Abduction researcher Bud Hopkins, certainly a groundbreaking researcher, brought the field forward with his research. Credit goes to Bud Hopkins. Carl Flock was a researcher on UFO. He kind of presented a different perspective on what Roswell might be, but certainly credit goes to Carl Flock for his research as well. Clifford Stone and Antonio, met Clifford 10 years ago out in Roswell. He did a great amount of research. He was part of the original Stephen Greer disclosure campaign, May 9th, 2001. So credit goes to Clifford Stone for his research and keeping this field going. Here's another photograph here of Clifford Stone on the left. Crop circle researcher Colin Andrews, another one of these fantastic researchers out in England, and he had really brought the field of crop circle research into a much more broad understanding and made it kind of a global research effort. And the credibility of his research was really never questioned. And he really did a good job bringing the information to the people. So credit goes to Colin Andrews. Another Colman von Keviczky photograph here, rare type researcher. He was known in New York, but he wasn't known that far outside the New York area. And you can see here, he's holding up one of his briefing documents. And these are kind of like on a monthly basis. Abduction researcher and author David Jacobs. Credit goes to him for his research on abductions. And it's important that we highlight his work as well. Roswell researcher and author Don Schmitt. This is back in '92. So what can be said about Don Schmitt? I have to say that if it wasn't for Don Schmitt and Tom Carey, it's arguably that this gentleman has done more to promote and save the historical legacy of Roswell than any living human being right now. If it wasn't for Don Schmitt, Roswell may have been forgotten about it, but he has continued to keep the flame going all these years. When J. Allen Hynek was alive, they talked about it then, but he spearheaded the research, went out there multiple times. I think he's been out there 90 times now. Incredible. So credit goes to Don Schmitt for keeping the Roswell flame alive. Here we've got Kevin Randall and Don Schmitt, and Kevin Randall gets credit too. He was involved in some of the original research and authoring books on the subject. And I believe he still has a blog that he maintains even today. So we want to respect and pay honor to Kevin Randall as well. Okay, so we have to talk about Ed and Francis Walters. Of course, it was that Polaroid photograph that really put Gulf Breeze on the map. So credit goes to Ed Walters for bringing it all to the people. Could they have been faked? Could they have been photoshopped? Couldn't have been photoshopped, that's for sure. But other witnesses saw it too. So we have independent confirmation for a very similar craft that Ed had taken photographs. So it's a multiple confirmation case. So credit goes to Ed Walters for bringing that particular case to the public. In the center here, we've got UFO crash retrieval, Leonard Stringfield, researcher Leonard Stringfield. So we have to give credit to Leonard Stringfield for all of the witnesses that he had put together. Now, those names were never released, and we know why, because the agreement was that his sources would remain anonymous, but he would still preserve them by releasing his status reports. So in effect, we have maintained what the witnesses had asked for. They wanted to get the story out, but they didn't want their identity revealed. And the credibility of Leonard Stringfield and his steadfast agreements and promises to his witnesses are what really put him in another caliber. So credit goes to Leonard Stringfield for compiling all of these tremendous UFO crash retrieval cases. This is a rare one, President Harry Truman and Jim Moseley. Some documents from Jim Moseley are now maintained over at Clarksburg, West Virginia, Historical Archives, and the Gray Barker collection. So that's where some of his files are. I've seen those files, I've got copies of those files. So we do want to give credit to Gray Barker for maintaining some of the Jim Moseley collection as well. So here, President Harry Truman and Jim Moseley. Contactee Howard Menger, interesting gentleman, spoke to him on the phone once, long time ago. But what I think is very interesting as we move forward here is the model that was put together, and we'll move forward here. This is the prototype model, Howard Menger's HMX1-1951 prototype scale model. Apparently they were in the process of building a full scale version with a very advanced propulsion system. Difficult to pin down exactly what happened with all that because it kind of gets into a little bit of a gray area, but this is the proposal that they had for this particular configuration. Here we have Howard Menger with the model itself. Love to see that model today. I would just wonder if it's still around. Be great to see that model today. Did a little bit of a blow up here. This is a copy of a 4-foot radio-controlled electrocraft built and flown successfully by Howard Menger in 1951. A man-carrying model is in the planning stage. Would love to see that. It'd be great to actually see a man-carrying version and what the propulsion system is. And we'll do another blow up here. HMX1-1951 electrocraft. Nice model. Well done. Well done. Over here, we've got Howard Menger in the center, and then over to the right, we've got Bruce Maccabee. So that's what we have on this particular photograph. John Carpenter and Bruce Maccabee together, 600 DPI, and again, credit goes to Antonio Huneeus for this particular collection. Researcher John Keel and Doug Skinner. John Keel was a groundbreaker researcher, multiple authored books with his name on it. Credit goes to John Keel for bringing this research to the populace within multiple books. John Schuessler, MUFON founder, researcher John Schuessler. We have to give credit to John Schuessler for really starting a lot of this. He was the beginning founder of MUFON, multiple lectures, many different cases that he's examined, multiple books he was involved in. So we have to give credit for John Schuessler for actually spearheading this research and bringing it to the public. Here he is at Kennedy Space Center discussing some of the research that he was involved in. So again, credit goes to John Schuessler. Leo Sprinkle, psychologist, researcher. Leo Sprinkle has done some very good research, and we want to give credit to Leo Sprinkle as well. Now, I have grouped a couple of these photographs, and I've grouped 3 of them for a very specific reason. So author and researcher Linda Moulton Howe, we've got to give credit to Linda for the groundbreaking research that she's done. She's done a fantastic job, multiple articles, thousands of interviews, TV programs, books, lectures. Everyone knows Linda Moulton Howe. Credit goes to Linda for her research. So I've grouped 3 of these, and there's a very specific reason why I've done that here. We'll move on to the next slide. And here we have Soviet test pilot and ufologist Marina Popovich. Outspoken, great test pilot. She has a number of firsts within the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, ace pilot, and we have to give her credit as well. And then also we have abductee and author Dr. Karla Turner. So the question is, why have I grouped these 3 together? Why have I done that? For the simple reason is we do not have enough women investigators in this field. You know, this field of ufology has been dominated by men and men for like 50 years now. We really need to have all hands on deck, and we need to have more women investigators in this field. If we're going to come together as a united coalition and really end this cover-up, we really need all hands on deck. And so we're reaching out to our women investigators. We need your help. We need your help in this field. Okay, so now we're moving on to author Michael Hesseman. Interesting researcher. He was involved in multiple publications, so we'll give credit to him. Researcher Michael Lindenman, certainly a good lecturer. He was involved in multiple books. I believe that he's got, I've got a couple booklets from him, but good credit researcher for Michael Lindenman. Here's Mike Luckman and Timothy Good. Again, Above Top Secret, the Worldwide UFO Cover-Up was the groundbreaking publication by Timothy Good. Now here's that vintage photograph. I think this is somewhere around 76 timeframe, 76 to 78, UFO FOIA conference, Peter Gersten, Stanton Friedman, Bruce Maccabee. I don't think you're going to see this anywhere else, ladies and gentlemen. So this is kind of a world exclusive that we've got for you here. And we'll continue on with our next slide here. And here we've got Peter Gersten in the back, and you can just tell by the furniture alone, we're talking like, this is late 1970s, early 1980s, could be as early as 76 timeframe. So that's the timeframe that we're looking for here. Philip Klass, love him or hate him. He's part of ufology, a debunker. He was a Jim Moseley's on the right. He ruffled a lot of feathers within this field. He certainly had publications and articles. He was a lecturer, he was a researcher. He always seemed to find a prosaic explanation for all these UFO sightings. There was always a prosaic explanation within Phil Klass, but as we know, folks, that you just can't explain this phenomenon and put it in one box. This is a multi-headed hydra. We've got multiple things going on here. We've got man-made craft. We've got possible extraterrestrial craft. We've got ET craft. We've got USOs. We've got UFOs. We've got interdimensional craft. We've got possible high-tech civilizations that have been already living on this planet, pre-existing for thousands of years. So when you put this all together, you just can't explain this all away with some prosaic explanation. So that's Phil Klass and Jim Moseley. And we'll continue to move on here. So now we've got Preston Nichols. He was involved in the Montauk experiment. He dealt with books within time travel. He was intimately intertwined with Al Bielek. They kind of both did lectures together. So we want to highlight and give credit to Preston Nichols. Richard Haines, we talked about him before, and he specialized in these pilot UFO sightings and cases. Richard C. Hoagland, researcher, author, lecturer, Richard C. Hoagland. The way that Richard Hoagland puts together and delivers his lectures is just second to none. He's so fluent, he's so polished, he's just so well researched and read into this. And credit goes to Richard Hoagland for his work on the moon, the Mars, all these other space things that he's involved in. So we want to highlight Richard C. Hoagland and his fantastic contributions to this field. Dr. Richard Lear had to do with alien implants. We want to give him credit. He had helped others along the trail as well, so we want to give credit to Dr. Roger Lear. Stanton Friedman and Don Berliner. Don Berliner is also not only a UFO researcher, but also aviation researcher and historian as well, so we want to highlight these two gentlemen. Stanton Friedman, Mike Luckman, Brian O'Leary for this particular one. So boy, do we miss Stanton Friedman. Certainly it's good that we maintained his collection for historical purposes. So we want to give credit to these researchers. Dr. Stephen Greer, the list is just too long. May 9th, 2001 disclosure program. He spearheaded that. Multiple lecturer, researcher, CE5 initiative. So credit goes to Stephen Greer for pushing this field forward. Tom Carey, we mentioned him briefly before. He works hand in hand with Don Schmitt, and they've really put together multiple books on the Roswell incident. And if you read their publication, Witness to Roswell, it can be read in a weekend. And I highly recommend it for anyone who hasn't read that book. It's called Witness to Roswell, Don Schmitt and Tom Carey. If you read that book, ladies and gentlemen, with an open mind, you just can't walk away thinking that it was a weather balloon, it was a mogul balloon. There's definitely something going on there. And it's from the witnesses themselves, the testimony from the witnesses themselves, which really provides a powerful case for the case itself. And we'll move on to the next slide here. Vladimir Terziski, not too much hearing from him lately, but want to certainly give credit for his research on his German UFO connection. Walter Haut was the 509th Bomb Group member who actually wrote the press release back in '47. We've got him on the left and then Antonio on the right. So, wow, what a legacy Walter Haut has left us. So thanks to Walter Haut. Author Zachariah Sitchin, multiple publications talking about that strange planet that's out there. Could be approaching now. Who, is there a time frame? We'd certainly like to know. So credit goes to Zachariah Sitchin for his research. Absolutely. Here's one you won't see very much. From left to right, Mike Rogers, Betty Hill, Travis Walton. Interesting, rare photograph. I don't think you'll see this anywhere else in the world, so it's certainly an exclusive here. So we want to highlight their research and their experience. George Adamski, sort of a controversial contactee, a 50s timeframe. So we want to credit him and highlight his research and his certainly contribution to the field. Over here, we've got George Filer, who basically writes the weekly Filer's reports, and that gets emailed out to thousands of people. He's done a tremendous amount of research, and we want to definitely give credit to George Filer. And then also Astronomer Tom Van Flandern. He's done some fantastic research. We want to certainly give credit to him and thank you for his tremendous research. And that's what I have prepared for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with me today. The goal here was to just kind of go down memory lane and bring some of these researchers that are a little obscure back onto the public, get them some limelight. Some of them are no longer with us, but we want to maintain an important part of our national history by bringing these photographs together. Thank you for the comments that you've given me. Thank you for the inspiration, and thank you for basically keeping this subscription going. I'm going to continue with the lectures. I'm going to continue with the PowerPoint presentation. So you'll hear more from this channel. And I want to thank you for your attention and your assistance.